Hi, everybody. Ed Bixby here from the Global Green Burial Alliance, and this is Spotlight Now. Today, I'm with Traci Arieli of Comforting Closure. Traci Arieli is an end-of-life doula and grief coach who helps people have honest conversations about dying, death, and what comes after. She's the founder of Comforting Closure and host of the podcast, Comforting Closure, Conversations with a Death Doula. Traci works with individuals and families to navigate end-of-life experiences with clarity, care, and steady presence. Her approach is grounded and practical, shaped by real stories and real need. Whether she's supporting a family or interviewing a guest, her goal is to create space for meaningful conversations. So welcome, Traci.
Thank you for having me. I appreciate it.
It's our pleasure, and we're really glad to be able to introduce you to our community at the Global Green Burial Alliance. So why don't we get started by learning a little bit about what inspired you to become an end-of-life doula and to create Comforting Closure?
So I have a cousin, Heather, and she died of suicide when I was younger. And I saw how my family grieved, and I saw how my community grieved. And we didn't do it with as much presence as we should have, I would say. I know there are no shoulds, but it was a difficult time. And looking back, I knew that we could have done it better. And so fast forward, I turned 50, and I was in tech for many years, and I decided I want to do something that is more helpful to society. And I knew that this was just something that I wanted to do. So I stepped out of my role in tech and became an end-of-life doula.
That's beautiful. And I mean, I can totally relate. I mean, most of the people within our movement, whether they're death doula or natural burial enthusiasts, everyone seemed to start in the same way, which I find is very interesting. We're a group of people who didn't choose this profession, kind of chose us. So that's really great. For our viewers, could you explain the main differences between using a funeral home and the services of a death doula? And I stress that for the viewers because a lot of people don't understand, when they hear the word death doula, what does that mean? So, I think that would be wonderful if you could tell our audience a little bit about that.
So I consider an end-of-life doula or death doula like a quarterback in this arena. So we partner with not only funeral homes, but with hospice. We're there from when a person is planning for the future. And when I say planning for the future, we work with many people who are just looking at their advanced directives. They have children, and they know it's time to start getting their affairs in order to make sure that their kids are okay. So, as an example, part of their home planning is that advanced directive. So we work with people from that perspective. We also work with people when they do get sick. We help to advocate for them. And then, of course, we vigil and we work with the family so the families know and understand what a person might go through when they get closer to death and when they do die and when they're actively dying, because most people don't know and don't understand. They see what's on TV and that's it. Which is very different than in real life. So we educate a lot. We also do work with families and with individuals on what they want post-death. And we try to make sure that everything is planned for, so that when that person does pass away, their family and their friends could focus on grieving rather than rushing to the funeral home or rushing to the bank or doing a whole bunch of other things that need to take place after death, that's taken care of so that they could grieve and be together.
No, absolutely. And what I like about what you've said, and I think what's important for the audience to hear, and you've said it, is that, it's a much more intimate experience. You're dealing with these individuals at the end of life and you're comforting them and you're assisting a family so that this process is easier. So, we both know how difficult it can be to walk into a funeral home not understanding or knowing anything about what's next. So, I mean, I encourage anyone listening to this, really listen to what Traci has to say, because they, death doulas, end-of-life doulas do wonderful work, and it's really important. So With
It's
that being said, and I think you've already said this a little bit, but what benefits might a family have by having a death doula assist them with that at-home visual? Meaning that, I guess a lot of people maybe they don't understand that people want to die in their own home, surrounded by their family. So maybe you could explain a little bit about how that affects the people who were involved. Excuse
Yeah,
me.
and I think it is important. Most people do want to. I think that the last survey they did, and don't quote me on where the survey is or who did the survey, but it's about 80% of people do want to die at home. It's more intimate, it's more comfortable. You could take and set up your home how you want. You could play music that you want. You could put you can take and have the lights how you want them. You could have people read to you. You could have your family and friends, the people that you want there. You could have your pet or pets there. So really setting up what that place is going to be like at your end of life. When I talk about death, when I talk about being an end of life doula, I like the term end of life doula because I focus in on the end of life. You're still living. This is the last part of your life. So let's look at that quality of life and try to make it as good as possible. So what's going to make you comfortable at home? What is who is going to, or who do you want to see? Is there anything that you need to take care of before you pass away? Is there anything you want to do? So these are the conversations I have with people when I talk to people about what they want for their end of lives. It really centers on the quality of life. And from there, you make decisions. You can make decisions. And that's not only in, the place you want to die, and who you want to be around you as you are actively dying, but that is also how you want, after you pass away, what you want done to your body. Do you want people at home? Do you want a ritual cleaning? Meaning, it's not a full body cleaning, but many people do like to make sure that their loved one, that there is some kind of cleaning that takes some kind of washing that takes place with candles and with incense. There is some type of ritual. Do you want that after? Does your family want to be around and with you as you pass away? So there's a whole bunch of questions and that should be asked, and a whole bunch of planning. We plan our weddings, we plan our birthdays, we should be planning our death also. And then there's also that conversation about what you want done to your body after. And there are so many options out there that people just don't know about. A whole bunch of options now in green burial. And unless you have those conversations, you don't know about them. So part of what we do as end of life doulas is have those conversations.
Absolutely. And I really like what you said, when you said end of life doula. I think that is very important, and I can appreciate that. And I'm going to start using that term myself because, that really is truly what you're doing. You're helping someone at the end of their life make these difficult decisions and make them feel good about it. And there's a lot to be said for that. And you mentioned green burials. you know, Having an in-home vigil, uh, the end-of-life experience, I believe it's very akin to a natural burial service and ceremony. What are your thoughts? Do you feel the same way when it comes to that?
Oh, yes. I think that there are, as I said, so many options, but there is, for so many years, I think that, in the 80s and 90s and early 2000s, I think that death was so mechanical and medicalized,
Right.
where we're stepping away from that. And we're really starting to see the humanity in, at the end of life, in death. And I think that having, your vigil at home and dying, passing away at home, and then the green burial is something that's really getting back to who we were as a society way back when. I mean, we didn't, most of us died at home, got ill and died at home in the 1800s, up until really the Civil War. And then and I'm sure you know this, but you know, as soon as the Civil War happened, we had so many people dying, so many young, hundreds of thousands of men dying away from home. So how do people get to see their loved ones again? How do we bring back their loved ones? And then the funeral industry was born. And so I think we're coming back to, hey, people dying at home, we're taking care of our loved ones at home to make sure that they have the best possible end of life, the most comfortable end of life that they could have. And then burying our loved ones in a green burial, I think is so natural because that's how we did it before. We're coming back to what we were before.
No, you're correct in that, and I can agree with that. I mean, it's come full circle. We get people who say, when did this come about? Well, it's since the dawn of time.
Yeah.
And I tell my family members all the time, they say, I don't know if I can actually participate. And we say, it's not required, but it's always encouraged. But we know that once they do, our ability to care for our loved ones in death is locked up in a little box in our brain. It's in our DNA. And once that's released, people after that say, wow, I can't believe, I was able to do that. But we all have that ability. So I think you're 100% correct. I mean, we're just bringing ourselves back to the roots, of who we were and who we are. And I think what's really important for people, for the viewers in particular, to know is that, talking about these options while they're living is most important so that you don't leave this burden on others. And I understand that you offer some pre-planning services. How might one plan for an end-of-life doula service, and what do those arrangements entail? I'm sure it's probably different for everyone, but
Yes. It is really dependent on what the person needs. As I said, I and most end of life doulas really offer a whole bunch of services. So if you look at the end of life journey, and I'm really fortunate that I've been able to work with people before they're sick, many people before they're sick, working with, when they're doing their will and they're doing their estate plan. Part of that estate plan is the advance directive. And most attorneys don't know how to talk about death. And doing something like an advance directive or a living will, they're two different things, first of all. Even if you have a living will, you should have an advance directive. And it's not just about checking the marks. So there's a conversation that goes into that, and it comes back to quality of life. So there's that discussion. So that's one of the service most end of life doulas really taken and offer is having these discussions. Personally, I have the discussions not only with the person, but I bring in their I really say that you should have at least two healthcare representatives called out, and I bring them in and we have a full-on discussion about this person, what they want, because you can't, all the scenarios are not in these 3 pieces of paper. So they really need to understand what the person wants. And then, of course, there's a planning, not only the vigil planning and what the person wants around, wants at the time of their death or as they're nearing death. But there's a lot more planning like, okay, where are my social media accounts? How are people going to get on those? What do I want done with them? If they're living alone, my utilities, there's a whole bunch of things, my car keys. Yeah, there are a whole bunch of things that people don't think about. And so you need everything documented to make it easy. Put it in a nice, document everything, put it in a bow. So as I said, your family doesn't have to worry about it. And part of that is planning your funeral or planning your end of life ceremony. Some people like to do a life review or have a celebration of life before they pass away. So that's also an option. I see it's becoming more and more popular. It is beautiful because not only are you telling people what they meant to you, but they're telling you what you meant to them. So I do that work and, the vigiling, as I said, also, and the funeral planning. And then I do a lot of grief work, not only with the family post-death, but also pre-death, to help with that anticipatory grief.
Yeah, it's wonderful work. I mean, I've had the pleasure of working with many end of life doulas, throughout my career in this, and I can tell the viewers and the providers alike that it's meaningful. It's almost you share a personal journey with someone that it's almost as if you become a family member in many ways. It's really profound. And with that being said, I'm sure that there's people watching this that would want to know a little bit about your online webinars and training events and how they might be able to participate in that experience. So that is things that you offer, correct?
I offer training to other doulas, as far
Oh,
as, yeah, but as far as online trainings, I do a weekly podcast. And I think the best way to see my podcast, you can listen to it on all the major, podcast platforms. You could see it on YouTube. You could also view it on my website, comfortingclosure.com/multimedia, just a multimedia link. And there's a really good filter section. So if you want to look at different green burial or different burial options, there is that burial filter, and you could go and you could learn. So that's the way that I try to educate.
right. No, and that is how you educate people, and I hope everyone's heard what you've said and they take a look at what you're doing, because I'm sure this conversation will inspire some of our viewers to want to do the work that you're doing, and that's really important. And another interesting thing, part of the conversation I think we should have is that, is in particular in California and some other states, there's a real uptick in medical aid for dying. And I think the end of life doula, I'm sure, is instrumental in this process. And I know that you offer some grief counseling. So are you seeing an uptick in this with any of the people that you're serving? Are you seeing more of those services?
Yes, medical aid in dying is, I'm very passionate about that people should have the autonomy to decide when they're going to pass away, especially when they're ill. And while it's far from perfect, right now there are 11 states where it is legal. And then DC, District of Columbia. And hopefully in January, I do believe in January, New York will be the 12th state. So still not offered in a lot of different states. There are some rules behind it, so it's not everyone could participate. But I think it's so important that people do have the knowledge that that's available in 11 states. I know in Vermont and in Oregon, there aren't residency requirements. So if you need to, I should say, because no one wants to do medical aid in dying. No one wants to die. People are dying and they're in pain. So if there's a need, I know that those two states will allow you to participate in their state. So yes, I
Yeah.
see many people. I actually get calls from people who are out of state, so that I could educate and I could support them. When I take and support people in California who are doing medical aid in dying, I actually am there with them because it's a scary thing. So for them and their families. So I do education, and I also sit with them to make sure that they are okay, and then to assist with their family also.
You're 100% correct as well. It is very difficult, and it's a very noble and difficult decision to be made. And people don't want to die, but like you said, sometimes the circumstances are such that it's the pain or whatever they may be experiencing makes it too difficult to live. So thank goodness, there are states that have allowed this, and I'm sure eventually everyone will follow. So I mean, this brings me to my favorite part of the interview, Traci. Where do you hope to see, your work, comforting closure, and what you do, let's say in the next 5 to 10 years? I know you're an educator, so if you had a wish, where would you like to see things maybe in the future?
Honestly, I would like to see us having these conversations. I'd like to see doctors leading these conversations and nurses and knowing how to comfortably have these conversations because doctors and nurses through their schooling, their medical school, they don't learn or they don't get there's not a course in how to talk about this. Their job is to save people.
Right.
And so to have those conversations, I want doctors to feel comfortable. I want the attorneys who are working with people on their estate plans to feel comfortable having these conversations. I would love for people at assisted living homes who are helping people living at these homes to feel comfortable that they know what's going to happen next and they are able to support their residents. So that's my wish because while I do a lot of one-on-one work, that's not going to move the dial much. And so I do want to see that dial moved and I want people to be comfortable talking about this and knowing that's going to happen. So planning for it.
You're again. I can't agree with you more. It, it you're doing a lot of the heavy lifting. So know that. And anyone watching this, think about what Traci's just said. I mean, it really is important that our healthcare professionals do focus on this. You're 100% correct. And I think the good work that you're doing will inspire, that change. I really do believe that will happen. So I got to tell you, Traci, we here at the Global Green Burial Alliance appreciate the work that you do. We appreciate the time that you've given us today, allowing us to introduce you and what you do to our family. Please, everyone watching, visit comfortingclosure.com/multimedia. I think I got that correct. And support Traci, support your end-of-life doulas around the country. It's important work, and we really appreciate it. So thank you for being here today, Traci.
Thank you.
Yeah.